have lived most of my adult I would say adult life out of the country.
Okay.
So I thinking, yeah, at some point I had enough. I wanted my kids to grow in a space where I grew up in. So I returned to my country of origin. But it has been always a back and forth because for me it's very important. I'm very keen about community and the human currency. So for me it was very important that my kids grew up in the kind of culture that I did grow up in. For some reason, that meant a lot to me. And so I moved back with my entire family.
Okay, that's nice. So, Irene, when you hear the term personal branding, what does it mean to you? From
So
your
for
journey?
me, personal branding, for my journey, yeah, personal branding for me is very close to my heart in the sense that throughout my career, I've kind of like worked behind the scenes, right? I have helped other people build their own brands, build their own personality, both online and offline. And I see the power of being, a real person and being authentic. And not just for now, but especially now when um, there's a lot of the changes in technology and AI at the moment. And now I feel that more than ever, it's very important to have a personal brand that maybe ties along with if you have an organization or a company. So for me, personal branding is how do you want to be remembered, in the long term or the bottom line. So if, for example, you're someone who is a content creator or you're present online, what if your face and your face and your name is taken out of content that you write? Would anyone remember and maybe guess that this could be this person? So for me, personal branding is the real you that you're bringing out there that is able to impact and change other people's lives, and finding your own space and your own voice to be able to make a change within. It could be really small from your small community, or it could be even big, going globally. So for me, that's what personal branding means.
But yeah, according to like research, I notice most
Mm.
people mix marketing to branding. What can you say about that?
Yeah. So I'm not an expert in marketing, but this is what I would say. I've had the opportunity to work in really multidisciplinary teams, and also through my education, through my MBA, because I did an MBA in management, and so I kind of like have a broad idea about every topic. And having worked in market research, I feel that people get this confusion because it's completely different things. And if you followed me on social media, you see that I say the same thing when it comes to communication. And to say that communications is not social media, because there was communications before there was social media, as well as marketing, right? There's so many parts of marketing. There's the research part of marketing. There's customer. I'm not sure what customer relations. There's just many different things under marketing. And so when people have a mix of this, branding is more like, I would say personal branding is more about your personality, putting yourself out there and tying it to kind of like values, your norms, and all of that, while telling a story that could be profitable for you as a person. Now, marketing has all of these different things that has really, it's definitely connected, but it's completely different. For example, there's the go to market entry that you would do, first of all, kind of research to find out if I can fit into this market. If the product that I'm designing works into this market works in this market, that's just another part. Advertising is also a part on the marketing, and so there's always this confusion, but it has to be distinguished for you to be able to build a proper brand. For example, I would say a personal brand also could mean, without your title, as for me, for example, as head of communications, what am I, or how can I introduce myself somewhere, not because of my company, not because of my job title, but because of me as a person. So for me, that's a bit around more of what you should focus on at the moment when you're building, especially from a smaller space based on what you have, and growing bigger based on when you have more exposure.
That's nice. So, Irene, looking back at your career, how did you start building your identity in business and leadership?
So I would say, based on my lived experience, I have taken upon, like I said before, while I was introducing myself, that I wear so many hats, right? So I have started a foundation. I have owned my own business. So before I was, when I was much younger, I was really into. I loved the beauty part of business. So I was into hair and makeup, and at the time, I used to live in a very white dominated society where we had very few black people like myself, or black kids like the ones that I had. And then we had Afro kinky hair. And so for me at that time, I wanted to, I wanted that our voices should be out there. I wanted kids who had my skin tone to be more confident in their hair, and for especially for white moms that had black kids to be confident in their hair. So I started at a very, I would say, when I had my kids in the process, which I always call, and I tell other women, it's like the slower lane of your life. So when I had my kids, then I started doing a brand. So I called it Afro Soft, where I designed products at the time to help manage kinky hair texture. And then it already put me in a space of leadership where I had to connect with many people. In the beginning, I had to be the person that did everything. But as time went on, I employed a couple of people, and then I also, started managing different people. And from then, I now moved into working with a full time employment where I got leadership roles. And throughout my time working with people, for some reason, maybe it's a cultural thing, or maybe because I am a firstborn child,
Okay.
in the process, I realized that my style of leadership was more around a servant type of leadership. Because I believe strongly in the golden rule that says, do unto others what you would love to be done unto you. And so I use this in how I manage people. And if you notice, I talk a lot about the human currency because my entire path in my career has always been about people have pushed me, or I have pushed other people to get to a certain space. And to be able to do this in every place where I have worked or led or developed something by myself, for example, this company I just told you about, or my foundation, for me it was very important to create a structure where people can thrive, where people, it's easy for people to receive and give feedback. For me that's like the ultimate kind of space where I function. And so I believe strongly that if I can function in a space like this, I would want other people to function like that. And so through my leadership, I have always wanted to, when I recruit people, skills for me is one thing, but for me, what I always really look at is their attitude. Your attitude to be able to learn, your willingness to want to change things and do them differently, your willingness to want to discover things in a different way from another person's lens, from another person's perspective. And because I have grown in a space where I've met people with so many different backgrounds and cultures, it's very important to find this kind of balance, so that someone who has lived all of their life in Asia, or maybe all of their life in the US or in Europe, when we come into the same room, we feel like the same people wanting one specific goal. And so for me, that's how I've always led as a leader. So from a perspective of a servant to a leader, and because I've also had the most amazing mentors and managers whilst in my career, so I've actually taken this kind of way of working from them and have moved over as I've also grown in my space and in my career.
Okay. Can I ask you something? Yeah,
Yes,
as
please. That's
as
why I'm here.
as a female leader, what are challenges you faced coming up?
So
So
my
my
path, I
path,
would
I would
say,
say,
has been quite different, because I have worked in a space where most of my at the time as a manager, I always had superiors who were male. So kind of I've worked in a male dominated space, but for some reason, I might say I've been lucky, because these people have always wanted the best for me and have always pushed me. And I've also worked in programs. Excuse me.
Program.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Sorry, I
can.
had an incoming call. I'm sorry about that. So I've also worked in programs also that are women led. And so I haven't had really much of a struggle, I would say, in my career working as a leader as a woman. But maybe someone else would have the story. But as a woman, I've really honed up or leaned towards, willing to learn and unlearn, because this is also something that I think many people need to embrace, the fact that if you come into a new culture or new space or a space that is male dominated, you have to find what are the things that would make you shine, I would say, within your role. So there's this thing where I say, I talk a lot about stakeholder management, and I say this to anyone that gets into a new role. You have to understand the dynamics of the spaces that you walk into, and not just the dynamics about influence or impact, but really about how power moves. When you get into these organizations, you have to know who are those, who are loud and that can push you. This is also different from the real people who make the decisions. And knowing that if you're in a room and people are nodding while you're presenting, as if they are in understanding or buying in, is not always the case. So it's very important that in your first, I would say, 3 months, you're using time to be able to understand these power dynamics. And if you understand this, it really reduces the kind of, I would say, tensions and some of the things that you can avoid to be able to grow in a space as a leader and as a woman. So for me, that's what I have learned over the years, and I think it's been helpful because I have really not had those kind of challenges, but also because depending on the specific industries in which you find yourself.
Okay. So, at what point did you realize that personal branding opening real opportunities for you?
I would say I have always known that, but I just didn't have the time to really focus on personal branding for me as an individual, because for almost a decade, this is what I've done, working with other people, building their own brands and all of that. So for some reason, because throughout my career, I haven't really had the time to really position myself as a person. But I would say over the last, I would say 8 months, so like I would say for 3 months, I had a thought, maybe I should get on LinkedIn and really start pushing myself as pushing my personal brand, because I've always been the person who is behind the scenes, making sure that everything happens, cutting the T's, dotting the I's. That was more kind of like my personality, and I'm very good when it comes to being back there, making sure everything happens perfectly. But I have never been thrown out there or throwing myself out there. But then life did throw me out there, because when my dad was diagnosed, that was like 10 years ago, I struggled a lot to be able to find solutions for him to make this disease that was breaking my family apart, to be able to find a solution. And because of that, I always talk about people again. I can't just stop talking about how humanity is so important, and because we are social beings, it's very important to relate with other people. Like you now that reached out to me, I reached out to someone, and this person said I would help you without knowing me. And because I reached out and told my challenges, I got the opportunity because of the brain tumor to speak. I have spoken in over, I would say, eight international stages on multidisciplinary teams having medical doctors, oncologists, advocates, and patients themselves. But without me having this curiosity of wanting to know, wanting to have more access to information, and wanting to really help my dad so intentionally, this happened to me. So now I started building a personal brand as someone who advocates for patients' right. And at that time, I had no idea what a patient's right was. And so, because of this, I was able to join a society called SNOSA, which is the Society for Neuro-Oncology for Sub-Saharan Africa, and also as a part of the IDTA, which is also another influential organization when it comes to cancer. And because of all of this, we were able to design a patient charter rights that was accepted in the European Union. And that for me was is kind of like the biggest milestone I have had over the years. So this kind of I would say this kind of lived experience really made me to realize how important it is for me to build a personal brand. And not just a brand because I want to put myself out there, but because I really want to touch people. I really want to create impact. I really want to be able to influence change in many ways. And I think that everyone has the potential to find their voice and to be able to do that. And so that's why I think that everyone has a potential, not just in your community, but globally. Because at the time when I was seeking for solutions for my dad, I was based in Cameroon. But because I reached out to someone that could help me, then I was able to speak in stages in the US, in Spain, in Austria, in Italy, and just to name a few. But at that point in my life, I would tell you honestly, because I'd always been a person that worked in the back. I wasn't I wasn't a public speaker, right? I didn't know how to tell my own story. But because someone trusted me and gave me the platform, I was able to tell my story, not just my story, but the story of the challenges of cancer patients within my community. And
Okay.
over the years, it has created a lot of impact and changed a lot. So personal branding is really key and it can tie you to about anything, but you need to find your voice, find who you are and find your purpose. So in the process, I don't know if you know this, but there's also this Japanese concept called the ikigai, which I've used a lot to be able to find myself and find my purpose and to understand what life means for me as a person. So it's helped me a lot build my personal brand.
Okay.
So I didn't have a timeline. Unfortunately, I can't tell you in 1 year or in 2 years, but really a personal brand takes time to build because you need to build trust. It's really about trust and people believing in what you know and what you do.
Okay. So, what mistake do people make while trying to build personal branding?
I think for me, what I've realized over the years is that personal branding is about not just about your audience, but about you as a person first. You being able to trust yourself and find yourself. And then if you work with a team, maybe trusting your team and then trusting the process. And now a personal brand is not built in a day, except that maybe you it's never really built in a day, honestly. So there are no shortcuts. It takes time for you to build this kind of I would say an audience or people to trust you and having the right network. So personal branding is not about having kind of like a big audience on social media because before social media there was personal branding. And so just that it's changed the ways based on the innovation and technology. But personal branding is not just about numbers, it's really about the impact that you can create based on I would say maybe what would be the knowledge you're sharing or putting out there, the amount of impact or influence that you can create.
Okay. Yeah, I want to ask, what's the name of the NGO again? Because someone asked me.
Okay, which one? Which of them? The one about cancer or the one that I'm running? Or
The one
so?
that.
And let me just give a general. So I
Okay.
am part of the IBTA. It's IBTA. So International Brain Tumor Alliance. So this is the organization that put me on the map, I would say, when it comes to patient advocacy. And they did not only put me on the map, I have to, let me just call her name, Katie Oliver, and her husband were very supportive of me through my journey without even knowing who I was at the time and gave me an opportunity. The first ever international podium or platform that I ever spoke on was in Spain. Like, at that time, I would tell you to be honest, if you ever stumble on the video so that everyone knows, I cried the entire time on as a keynote speaker, and that really changed for me how my career, how I grew in the space of telling my story because it was extremely authentic. Even when I thought tears was something that shows as a weakness, but led to an amazing way in which people connected to my story. So that's the first organization. And because of this organization, we now created the SNOSA. So I think it's SNOOS. So SNOSA, if you type it, is the Society for Neuro-Oncologists for Sub-Saharan Africa. Because my story was about the inadequate access to both knowledge and healthcare when it comes to cancer patients. And I'm sure if in the audience, or maybe any of us, we probably know one person that has suffered from cancer. And you see how challenges it is when it comes to the entire patient's journey. And at the time, I was so focused on the patient's journey, completely forgetting the caregiver's journey, which at the time was my role as a caregiver for my dad. So that's the one, SNOSA. It was created to connect doctors within sub-Saharan Africa to be able to provide access to. And the one that I created is the Jacob Hopes Foundation. It was named after my dad. My dad passed, but I think that he was very lucky in the way that I took the battle to be able to fight and create awareness around this horrible disease. So those are the organizations that I've been involved with when it comes to, my story around caregiving and patient advocacy.
So how are you able to balance them all?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know. Like, so many people have asked me. I just think maybe I was probably designed to come into the world and be that person that would do all of this because in all honesty, I did it for so many years so seamlessly without understanding the amount of impact that it had on me as a person. And being a mom, being a wife, being a firstborn child, working a 9 to 5, starting a personal brand, starting a cosmetic brand. I'm not sure how I did all of that, but somehow I've been able to do it over the years. And I feel that it comes a lot with how you structure yourself and create specific systems. So I think that's what has helped me over the years to be able to wear all these different hats. But as I grew older, I realized that I really have to be more intentional and specific in the things that and how I do them. And so when I lost my mom also in the process, my mom also unfortunately had cancer and she died as well after my dad. So I kind of like just kept going because I felt like I had a mission to complete. And I have taken a break over the past months to be able to find myself, find my ikigai, and that has been helpful also in how I have built my brand. So that's
Sorry
it for
about
me.
your mom.
Thank you.
So how can young people turn their visibility into real business opportunities?
Yeah, so I know lots of people struggle with saying that. What will I tell the world, or what would I tell my audience? And as someone who has worked a lot in communications and messaging, it's very important to stick to one kind of message that you really have a lived experience around. And when I say lived experience, I know someone will say, no, I haven't done any job or anything. There's so many things that you have done as a lived experience. You've probably been a prefect in school. You have probably led something, or you have done a small project around your home and all of that. That's already for you to start finding where are my strengths and what are those things that I want to do more or be remembered about. It's having the ability to find what passion is, what you know and what you have learned, and find an intersection in between and be able to tell your story. So you don't have to have 10 years of experience like myself or a decade and plus of experience like I do to be able to build a personal brand. No, you don't. You have to start from what you have. So the little experience that you have that you think it's little, but there's a lot that you can tell and learn out of your story that can also impact another person's life. So you start with what you have based on the resources that you have. You don't need to be that person that needs to have a mic. I mean, you started your podcast, right? And
Yes.
for me, I would honestly tell you that I would have said no to maybe coming to your podcast if I want to say I want to look at the number of followers you have and all of that. Because all my life is because other people have given me an opportunity and a platform. I push anyone that wants to be somebody to be something. And because you're starting, for example, a podcast, maybe you think that, oh, I need a Mac laptop, I need a specific kind of studio and all of that. No, just start with what you have and grow progressively. So it's the same. If you have just you just graduated from the university, you have a story, you have an experience that had taught you something based on maybe your community where you live in, and tie it around what your education has been, and you would find a way to tell a story. And because there's a lot of AI, use of AI, and everyone sounding the same, it makes it even difficult now for you to find your voice, or maybe just using random plates and all of that. But if you start by just writing 5 sentences, 10 sentences, and practicing, and going back to reading more about how people write and how copywriting is done, you'll be able to tell a story. But this will not happen in the first 1 year.
Yeah, sure.
You need time and consistency to build. You need to keep telling that story, telling that one message until you yourself become fatigued of what you're saying. Then you will know exactly that you have won the game and have broken the cringe. So because I know everyone has this cringe, and we our brains have the ability to self sabotage, right? So it's very important that you trick your brain all the time to remember that you want to get out of your comfort space, and just write, tell your story, put it out there. I mean, it doesn't have to be that you must be on social media and all of that, but you have to find a way that in any room that you get into, someone remembers you by what you did or how you told your story.
So why do you think people give up after a failure?
Yeah, because I think it's just basic logic, right? You think that you do not see, this is just a waste of my time. I start and then nothing is happening. And it's because it's the kind of mindset that you got into while starting. Because you've probably heard stories of people say, oh my God, I just did a first post and I went viral and then I had so many likes and all of that. It's true for some people. I'm not sure how true that is, but for me, that has never been true for my story or my life. I have always built for so long and fought. Like I told you about my dad's story, right? I didn't
Yeah.
just meet this person randomly. This was in a time when there was no internet or mobile phones. I went to a cyber cafe. I wrote to 100 organizations, anything that I saw on the internet that had a brain tumor written on it. I went back, I followed up on all those emails until someone listened to me. But when I tell this story without telling how much I struggled to be able to have the information, you would think that maybe it just happened by, by an easy click in the hand. And I will tell you that most of the times on all of these podiums and everywhere I've been to, everything has been covered 100%. I have never spent a dime to do all of the work that I do, and that's why it's so meaningful for me. So just to say that for anything that you start, it has to be about the mindset and the intentionality around it. For me at the time, all I wanted was a solution to get the tumor out of my dad's head. No matter what, I had to do anything and everything in my little power at the time to be able to make this kind of change to happen. But I didn't know how far I would go by just asking 100 organizations to listen to me. And I've been on more than I've gone to six, over I would say 7 countries as a keynote speaker because I sent 100 emails when there was no internet on mobile phones. So just to say that you need to be patient and know that it takes time, and every person's path is also different. Some people it would happen faster, some it would not. But then realize that life is like a massive road with different lanes. Sometimes you switch to the fast one, sometimes you're in the slow one. And so it's important to have this balance and always have the focus of what it is that you want to achieve. Put your eye to your north star. So that's what I tell everyone to stay focused and just remember what you want to get out of the journey. With that kind of mindset, you wouldn't give up very soon. But if you go just because of maybe peer pressure and all of that, maybe it's not the right time for you to start doing what you're doing or what you want to.
So during that moment, what is the motivation behind you? What keeps you going?
So for me, I say that motivation is just one thing because everyone is always motivated. Because I would say that, for example, I'm using my dad's story because I would say that um, that's the most challenging thing that I have done in my whole life to be able to break through all of those barriers. It's always funny how I say it because if you it's amazing what I've been able to accomplish. Not to brag, but because I never even have the time to brag, and everyone is always telling me like you've done so much that the world needs to know, and that's why I even got into personal branding because I didn't know how to tell my own story and feel comfortable in saying what I have been able to achieve. But I think that the whole point around it is not just the motivation, it's the discipline and staying focused on the North Star, right? For me, like I said, I wanted my father, when I got his diagnosis, I was told that he would be able to stay just for a maximum of 6 months. And all I wanted at that time was that I wanted to be with my father. I wanted my kids to have a granddad, and because I struggled that much, he stayed for 9 more years. And I think that that's a big accomplishment based on what I wanted to have. So it's not just about being motivated; it's about having the discipline and staying focused to what you want to achieve. Because there's a lot of noise around anything that you have to do, and also because no other person understands you more than you do yourself and your reality. That way, you can stay focused and disciplined.
Okay. So from your experience, what make personal branding stand out?
For me, is just two things: is being authentic, and authentic in the sense that you're being true to yourself. I do not want know what your reality is based on. I don't know your resources, your abilities, your capabilities, but you have to be, your task building a personal brand is to be able to identify these different capabilities that you have. And if you stay true to it, you would and have a winning aspiration, then you would find ways of building a brand that is sustainable and that would last in the long term.
Okay.
So that's it for me. It seems simple, but it's a lot of work. Yeah.
So will you say every business needs personal branding?
Everyone,
Every
can you say
business
that
needs
again?
personal branding.
In all honesty, right, I tell the management and leadership in every company that they need to push themselves out there. It could be through thought leadership, um, because people really connect with people, right? If you have a business, say it's called, I would use the simplest, maybe your bakery, you make beautiful wedding cakes. There's so many people who do wedding cakes, but people can connect more to your company if they understand, if they have a bit of a knowledge around leadership or those who run this company. Because everyone feels, because people nowadays, it's not like before where there's not access to information. It's so easy to find out what people do, what are their values, before I even step into a shop to maybe order something or buy something. So for example, I'm not sure how this is, especially in the African space or in our markets here, but I can say for sure that in the European market, I would not want to buy from a clothing brand that I've heard that has in their supply chain they have challenges on human rights. When people hear about this, nobody goes to this brand. And so, if we have leaders in such brands that really talk about how it's important for them that in their supply chain they check and they make sure that kids do not work on those cotton fields, or maybe women are not maltreated, or people are paid on time, it gives kind of a connection to the brand, and leadership and the personality. So I agree and I say that it adds a lot of value if you are building an organization or a social enterprise whilst building your personal brand. I think that the two really go together. For example, lots of people in the Europe in the Western world eat a lot of drink a lot of coffee or eat a lot of chocolate. But no cacao or coffee is grown in those parts of the world. And because of exposure, more people are asking questions. What happens to the kids that, or to the farmers that are growing the cacao beans? So it has moved away from people just consuming, but consumers wanting to relate to a brand, wanting to understand what this brand means for the environment, what it means for technology, what it means for people, what happens to the communities in which they operate. So I would advise anyone, small or big, have the two and kind of have like a balance of how you do it. But for bigger organizations and bigger non-for-profit organizations, I see push a lot around top leadership.
Okay. So in business, personal brand is really important. That's good.
It's very important. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But we should not mix marketing with personal branding, right?
No, no, it's completely different. It's completely different. And for well-structured organizations, it will be very clear what this is, right? There's people who are focused on doing those specific things around marketing, around communications, around finances, and so that's why companies are segmented into these different parts so that people own a specific discipline and move along with it. Think about an organization as so everybody does not have to mingle in everything, right? People have specialities. It's just like in medicine where there's a generalist and there's a gynecologist and there's an oncologist. There's a reason for that. And the same with the human body, each part has a specific function, but they connect all together with the spine to be able to transfer information to one place or another.
So goes
So
with your
goes with your
business as well.
business
Do
as
not
well. Do
try to
not try
be
to be
everything.
because
I see this
I
a
see
lot
this
in
a lot
smaller
in smaller
businesses where you
businesses
start
where
your
you start your
personal branding and
personal
everything
branding
starts
and
working
everything
and
and
you're
you're
doing
doing
everything.
everything.
And you might be lucky and then you
skill.
skill.
Now,
Now, in most
in
cases,
most
those
cases,
founders
those founders
become
become
bottlenecks in their organization because
organizations
they have created a space where they have always done everything, and it becomes a bit difficult to let go. So it's very important that in the very beginning, based on this on the resources that you have, build systems and structures that you know that as you grow, you can scale. Maybe for now, you do not need to have marketing. Why do you need marketing if you own a small space where you can just, do a bit of the things that you have to do around marketing? Until when you get to a level when you need a team in marketing or a team in communication or a team in sales, then you start to include all of this. But do not, I would say, have a clear structure that can help you to scale. And you can't do everything. You can't know everything. It's just impossible.
Okay. So what are the things you look out when you want to employ someone in your company?
Hmm, that's a good one. Maybe I've said it before. For me, it's the attitude. I mean, if you have the skills already, that for me is one thing. But for me, it's really the attitude because I believe that I have two things. Because I'm a small company, I do not function based on loyalty, right? I hire and have an onboarding process where I can get people to onboard in at least the shortest time of like maybe 2 weeks or a month and already start, doing what they need to do and move in the next 2 years. So for
Okay.
me, what's important for me is I I think that anyone can do that job because I've created a system where you onboard, you do so much, and you move. And because now, if you understand the job market, we're working with Gen Zs that are very want to stay motivated and keep going. And I understand that. And so I'm not building a space where I want someone to work for me to stay there in the next 5 years because I wouldn't even have the opportunity for them to grow as much, right? So I recruit for attitude and for someone who can take the baton in the next 1 month and run with it. And so for me, that's what's important. So attitude first, and then I have built, a system that could get you to work so fast, and then you leave in such a way that you have learned already what you need to do, and to move into a space where you can grow bigger than what I can offer for you. And I mean, for all the those that I've worked with, all in a good relationship afterwards, because they move and they're happy and they come back, and even sometimes they send us contracts because I'm a small company. I can offer a lot that you would want to stay with me for the next 5 years, and I even become worried if you have to stay with me for that long. So for me, that's the kind of culture that we have created so that people can unlearn, learn, thrive, and move forward.
Okay. So people without the right certification can also apply, right?
I mean, it depends on the roles, right? Because I have a consultancy firm, which means that we kind of like need people who, in the beginning, are generalists that can understand, different things, and can pick up really fast. That's why I hire for attitude, because I want people who can really pick up and really do things really fast, take initiative, not randomly, but based on the guidance of what we want to achieve. So if you have, we screen first of all based on those requirements. But when it comes to the interviews and how, we finally say, okay, we want to work with this person, it's really based on attitude. And the way we have designed our interview processes do check on this kind of needs.
Okay. So if you had to pick between attitude and smartness, which one will you go for?
Attitude all the time. Attitude.
Okay.
Attitude, because the kind of structure that we have, attitude is what wins, right? And so I think that everyone is actually smart, especially based on if you're hiring them to do a specific task that they say they know how to do it. And so being smart, I'm not sure what that. Sometimes you can be a one man's team or someone who doesn't know how to work with a group of people. But for me, if you have the right attitude, it's so easy to be able to learn. Sometimes maybe it's something that someone just needs imputing of the data. Anyone can learn that and do that really fast. If trained and shadowed properly, they would be able to achieve that. So for me, it's always the attitude
Okay.
first.
So attitude matters a lot in business.
Yes.
Yeah. Someone asked, which certification opens up global opportunities?
Now, for global opportunities, that's a very good question, because I think for most countries, because you need to have a specific background. Sometimes in some countries, they would want that you to have a certification from a university of that country, depending on the kind of roles that you're looking for. But now, when it comes, especially in my sector, I realized that when I had certificates from European universities, it was a lot easier for me to have access or to have certain doors open compared to my counterparts that didn't have, right? That is based on a specific sector. Now, when it comes, because not only around, when it comes to now these certifications that people have, like maybe the PMP for project management, or maybe something around data analysis, business analysis, all of these new kind of certifications that are not really under a specific kind of institute. It differs country to country, honestly. I know I understand the German system more than I do any other one. And I know that most people in this space really are not very keen to, maybe things have changed, but in my time when I was job seeking, that was some many years back, people would prefer degrees from universities that they know, not just online universities. And so I would say now the dynamics have changed. I cannot really advise a lot around, this remote style of working now where, maybe it's just a certificate is okay, but maybe these people have specific ways in which they match this certificate. So I cannot tell you that you need this specific certificate to open the door. But what I can tell you is that someone who reaches out to people, right, asks the right questions, more doors will be open to you more than anyone who has 100 certificates.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, can a sharp person venture into business?
Kind of,
A shy person, an introvert, venture into
yeah,
business?
definitely. Um, I could call myself before I'm an introvert. I could be this now, but when it's my time, I just completely wind down, right? I become myself again, and I don't want to have a lot of noise and many people around me. So it doesn't have to be that you are a loud person, or you have to practice. Being able to speak on the stage requires practice. For some people, maybe I hear it comes naturally, for others, not. So it has nothing. Introverts, maybe it simply means that maybe you'll be the last person to speak in a room. But hey, the other thing that you have that maybe other people do not have is your ability to stay quiet and listen and construct this information in your head and be able to tell your own story. So being an introvert doesn't mean that you do not know how to speak, right? You can speak, but you need time to maybe build yourself to be able to be confident now to say what you want to say. So an introvert, it has completely, it should never be something that you would use to self sabotage yourself, saying that I'm an introvert. When you like something and you have so much passion around it that you become obsessed about it, you would find a way to find the right time to speak and the how to speak and the specific things